Most planets have one apex predator. Maybe two if the ecosystem is particularly chaotic. The Chorus's homeworld had one. The Vreth had one. Even the Dominion, a civilization built entirely around the concept of being the most dangerous thing in any room, evolved on a planet with exactly one apex predator. Themselves. Earth has tens of thousands. That number is not a typo. That number is what caused a team of alien biologists, decorated researchers from 6 different civilizations, beings who had catalogued over 400 worlds, to stop their survey mid-transmission and request an emergency consultation with their respective governments. Not because the number was wrong, because it was right, and because standing next to them, holding a cup of coffee and explaining the difference between a venomous snake and a poisonous one with genuine enthusiasm, was a human named Dr. James Okafor who seemed to think this was all perfectly normal. It started as a routine survey. The Galactic Biology Consortium had been conducting ecological assessments of member civilizations' homeworlds for 60 years. Standard procedure: taxonomy, environmental data, atmospheric composition, food chain mapping. Every homeworld assessment followed the same pattern. Arrive. Survey. Catalogue. Leave. They had never, not once in 60 years of assessments across 41 worlds, gone over their allocated survey period. The Earth assessment was scheduled for 14 days. They requested an extension on day 3. Dr. Yiln of the Vreth, a being with 17 sensory filaments that functioned simultaneously as hearing, smell, and something close to emotional intuition, had been assigned as lead surveyor. She had assessed 11 worlds. She was considered the best in her field. She had catalogued the first predator on day 1 without concern. A large feline. Powerful. Efficient. Apex in its regional ecosystem. She had catalogued the second predator 2 hours later with mild interest. A canine species. Pack hunter. Sophisticated coordination. She had catalogued the third predator before lunch and felt the first whisper of unease. By the end of day 1, she had catalogued 19 apex or near-apex predators and had not yet left the first continent. She sent her preliminary report to the consortium. The response came back in 4 hours. Please verify. Suspected data error. She verified. There was no error. Dr. Okafor met the survey team on day 2. He was their assigned human liaison, a conservation biologist who had spent 20 years studying predator-prey dynamics on 3 continents. He was 47 years old, enthusiastic in the specific way that people who love their work are enthusiastic, and he brought homemade sandwiches to their first meeting because he thought they might not have tried bread yet. Dr. Yiln looked at the preliminary data she had compiled. Looked at this human. This soft, relatively slow, completely unarmored human. Who had grown up on this planet. Who had somehow survived growing up on this planet. And asked the question that would define the next 11 days. How are you still alive? Okafor laughed. Offered her a sandwich. That, he said, is a much longer conversation than you're probably ready for. He had no idea how right he was. Dr. Yiln did not eat the sandwich. Not out of rudeness. Out of the particular paralysis that overtakes a scientist when the data in front of them refuses to behave. She pulled up her catalogue. Spread it across the holographic display in the survey team's mobile research station. 19 predators. Day 1. 1 continent. She had highlighted the apex classifications in red. The display was very red. Walk me through this, she said to Okafor. From the beginning. He pulled up a chair, looked at her display, and smiled the way people smile when they're about to say something they know sounds unreasonable. Which beginning? He asked. Because Earth has several. He started with the ocean. This was, in retrospect, a mistake. Not because the information was wrong. Because Dr. Yiln had made a quiet assumption. The same assumption every alien biologist made when beginning a terrestrial survey, that the ocean was background context. Water. Climate regulation. Some fish. Okafor explained that Earth's oceans covered 71% of the planet's surface. Then he explained what lived in them. The survey team had 6 members. By the time Okafor reached the deep ocean segment of his introduction, the part where he casually described pressure-adapted predators hunting in total darkness at depths that would crush most known species, 2 of them had stopped taking note. Not because they'd lost interest, because they were having trouble processing the information fast enough to write it down. Dr. Presson of the chorus, a younger researcher on his first homeworld assignment, raised a filament. His harmonics carried the frequency his species used for polite but urgent confusion. These deep ocean predators, he said carefully. They have no contact with surface predators? Mostly no, Okafor said. So they constitute a separate predator ecosystem. Several, actually. The ocean has zones. Each zone has its own predator hierarchy. Presson's harmonics dropped to a frequency his colleagues had never heard from him before. How many zones? He asked. Okafor thought about it. Depends on how you classify them. Broadly? 5. But if you're being specific about pressure gradients and species distribution, closer to broadly, Presson said quickly. Broadly is fine. By midday, Dr. Yiln had reorganized her entire research approach. She had come to Earth expecting a food chain. What she was looking at was not a chain. It was a web. Dense, layered, interlocking, with predator pressure coming from so many simultaneous directions that she could not find a single prey species that was not being actively hunted by at least 4 distinct predators. She flagged this in her notes as anomalous. Then she realized it was not anomalous. It was standard. This was just what Earth looked like. She asked Okafor the question that had been building since the previous morning. Your species, she said, choosing words carefully. You evolved here. In this. We did. You were prey. Okafor's expression did something she didn't have a reference for yet. Not quite a smile. Something more complicated. We were, he said. What changed? He was quiet for a moment. Looked out the research station window at the treeline. Something moved in the shadows at the forest edge, large, 4-legged, watching with amber eyes. Neither of them moved. The animal watched for 10 seconds, then disappeared back into the dark. We got creative, Okafor said. Yiln stared at the treeline. That animal, she said. What was it? Lion, he said. Young male. He's been circling the station since yesterday. Yiln turned slowly to look at him. Since yesterday, she repeated. Don't worry, Okafor said, pouring himself more coffee. He's just curious. Yiln filed an updated report to the consortium that evening. The subject line read, requesting psychological support personnel. Reason, ongoing. The psychological support personnel did not come. The consortium sent something more useful instead. 3 additional biologists, 2 xenoecologists, and a data analyst whose entire specialty was what the academic community politely called anomalous ecosystem modeling, which was a professional way of saying she studied planets where the numbers didn't make sense. Her name was Dr. Aeveth. She had a reputation. She looked at Yiln's Day 3 data for 11 minutes without speaking. Then she said, I need to meet the human. Okafor shook her hand. She stared at the hand for a moment after he released it. Soft. 5 digits. No natural armor. No venom glands. No retractable anything. She had reviewed his species' biological profile on the shuttle over. Average speed, unremarkable. Average strength, unremarkable. Sensory range, limited compared to most apex-adjacent species. No natural weapons of any meaningful classification. She had then reviewed what humans had done to Earth's predator population over the last 10,000 years. The numbers from those 2 documents did not belong in the same universe. You domesticated wolves, she said. It wasn't a question. It was the specific tone of someone reading a punchline they don't understand yet. We did, Okafor said. Wolves that were actively hunting you. Well, their ancestors were. By the time domestication happened it was more. You turned your predators into companions. Okafor smiled. Some of them. Which ones didn't you? He thought about it with the expression of someone doing genuine inventory. I can get you a list, he said. She told him she would need the list. She did not tell him that she was already fairly certain the list was going to be the most alarming document she had ever read. She had a professional reputation to maintain. The list took 2 days to compile properly. Okafor was thorough. He cross-referenced by continent, by classification, by current conservation status. He included footnotes. He added a section he titled, Honorable Mentions, 4 species that were technically not apex predators but which he felt deserved acknowledgement for their contribution to keeping humans alert. This section included the box jellyfish, the cone snail, and a footnote about a fungus that he described as technically not a predator but spiritually very much one. Aeveth read the list in a single sitting. She flagged 43 entries. Then she went back and flagged 11 more. Then she sat very still for a while. The thing that broke her, professionally, academically, in the specific way that breaks a scientist who has spent 30 years building a comprehensive understanding of how ecosystems work, was not the large predators. She had prepared herself for those. It was the small ones. Okafor walked her through them with genuine affection. Spiders. Over 45,000 catalogued species. Present on every continent except one. Ranging from nearly invisible to please do not look that up before bed in terms of scale and temperament. And technically not predators in the classical sense. Technically capable of consuming a large mammal if given sufficient numbers and motivation. Okafor mentioned this as a fun fact. Aeveth did not find it fun. Parasitic wasp. He spent 4 minutes on parasitic wasp. At minute 2, Dr. Presson quietly left the room. He did not return for 40 minutes. Nobody asked where he went. How, Aeveth said when Okafor had finished, does anything on this planet sleep? Practice, he said. That's not an answer. Exhaustion mostly, he admitted. You get tired enough, you sleep anywhere. She stared at him. Your species evolved the ability to sleep, she said slowly, in an environment where being unconscious meant being eaten. We're pretty hard to eat quietly, he said. We're light sleepers. How light? He smiled. There's a reason we invented the concept of keeping watch. Aeveth added a new section to her report. She titled it, Psychological Adaptations, Preliminary Notes. It would eventually become its own document, 47 pages long. That evening, the survey team held an internal meeting without Okafor present. Yiln laid out the core, finding that none of them had said out loud yet. This planet should not have produced a spacefaring civilization, she said. By every ecological model we have, a prey species navigating this predator density should have either developed extreme biological defenses or gone extinct within 50,000 years. Silence. Humans did neither, she continued. They remained biologically unarmored. And they didn't go extinct. So what did they do? The data analyst asked. Yiln looked at her notes. They went to space, she said. Nobody laughed. Because nobody could think of a better answer. The formal report was due on day 10. Aeveth requested an extension. The consortium granted 3 extra days, which was unprecedented, and attached a message asking if everything was all right. She responded, professionally yes. Existentially, we are working through some things. Day 11 began with an excursion. Okafor had suggested it on day 4 and the team had unanimously, instinctively declined. By day 11 they had run out of ways to understand Earth from inside a research station and reluctantly agreed. He took them to a forest. Not a dangerous one, he said. Relatively, he clarified, when someone asked him to be more specific. The forest was in what humans called a temperate zone. Tall trees. Filtered light. The sound of things moving in every direction at once, which Aeveth noted in her recorder with forced clinical detachment, and Dr. Presson noted by walking very close to Okafor without acknowledging that he was doing it. Okafor moved through it like it was a living room. That was the thing none of them could stop watching. Not the forest. Not the data readings. Not the extraordinary biodiversity visible in every square meter of undergrowth. Him. The way he walked. Relaxed but never fully relaxed. A specific quality of readiness that was so deeply embedded in his movement that he probably couldn't turn it off if he tried. Eyes tracking without appearing to track. Weight distributed for rapid direction change. Every sense subtly engaged without any visible tension. Yiln had spent 11 days trying to find a biological explanation for human survival on this planet. Watching him walk through this forest, she started to think the explanation wasn't biological at all. "You're comfortable here," she said. "I love forests," he said simply. "You love them." "Grew up near one. My grandmother used to take me hiking." Yiln processed this. "Your elder," she said carefully, "brought you as a juvenile into an environment with active predator presence." "She brought snacks," Okafor said. "And bear spray." "What is bear spray?" He explained bear spray. Aeveth stopped walking. "You encountered a bear?" she asked. "As a child. Once. It was more scared of us than we were of it." "Was it?" "Probably. You don't sound certain." "Grandmother moved pretty fast for 63, he admitted. Something called from deep in the trees. Every alien researcher froze simultaneously. Okafor tilted his head. Listened for 2 seconds. "Woodpecker," he said. "About 40 meters northeast." They stared at him. "How?" Presson asked. "Do you know that?" "Sound pattern. Woodpeckers have a distinctive rhythm." He paused. "Also, I've heard them my whole life, so." "You catalogued predator sounds," Aeveth said. "Instinctively. As a survival mechanism." "I mean, I just know what birds sound like." "From childhood. Passively. Without formal training." He opened his mouth. Closed it. "I never thought about it that way," he said. Aeveth was already recording. "That," she said quietly into her recorder, "is possibly the most significant thing he has said in 11 days. They found the kill site an hour into the walk. A large herbivore. Recent. Clean kill, efficient, nothing wasted. The predator was gone, but its work remained, a reminder, matter of fact and absolute, of what this forest actually was beneath the filtered light and birdsong." The alien researchers stopped at a respectful, significant distance. Okafor crouched next to it. Examined the marks professionally. "Leopard," he said. "Female, probably. See the drag pattern? Smaller animal moves kills like this to protect them from scavengers." "There are scavengers," Presson said faintly. "Oh, plenty." Okafor stood. Looked around the tree-line with that particular calm alertness. "She's probably watching us right now, actually." Nobody moved. "Should we leave?" Yiln asked, in the tone of someone who had already decided the answer was yes. Slowly, Okafor said. "Don't run." "What happens if we run?" He looked at her. "Let's just not find out." Back at the research station, while the team collectively processed what the field exercise had done to their understanding of human neurology, Aeveth pulled Okafor aside. She had one question she hadn't asked yet. The one that had been sitting underneath all the others since day one. "Dr. Okafor," she said, "your species evolved here. Survived here. Eventually dominated here." She paused. "Does it ever frighten you? Knowing what this planet is?" He was quiet for a moment. Looked out the window at the darkening tree-line. "Every day," he said. She waited. "But here's the thing about growing up afraid," he said. "Eventually the fear stops feeling like a warning. It starts feeling like information." He turned back to her. "We didn't stop being afraid of this planet. We just learned to use the fear instead of being used by it." Aeveth looked at him for a long time. Then she opened her recorder. "Restarting psychological adaptations document," she said quietly. This is going to need a second volume. The final report took 4 days to write. It was supposed to take 1. The problem wasn't the data. They had extraordinary data. 11 days of field observation, 1,700 catalogued species, 43 hours of recorded conversations with Okafor, and enough ecological anomaly documentation to keep the consortium's review board occupied for a decade. The problem was the conclusion. Every member of the team wrote their section independently. Standard protocol. Prevents groupthink. Ensures diverse analytical perspective. When Aeveth compiled the sections, she noticed something. Every single one of them had arrived at the same conclusion. Using completely different dataset, different analytical frameworks, different professional vocabularies shaped by 6 different civilizations. The same conclusion. Word for word, almost. Humanity should not exist. Not as an insult. Not as a threat assessment. As a pure statement of ecological impossibility. By every model, every framework, every precedent established across 41 surveyed worlds, the conditions on Earth should have produced one of 2 outcomes. Extreme biological specialization, armor, venom, speed, something, or extinction. Humans had neither specialized nor gone extinct. They had done something the models had no category for. They had looked at a planet trying to kill them from 10,000 different directions simultaneously and decided, collectively, apparently without a formal meeting about it, that the correct response was to become the most adaptable thing that had ever lived. Not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most venomous or armored or ferocious. The most adaptable. Aeveth called the team together for one final meeting before the report was submitted. She put the conclusion on the display. Let them all read it again in silence. Then she said, I want to talk about what this means. Not academically. Actually. The room was quiet. Dr. Yiln spoke first. It means they're not an anomaly, she said slowly. We've been treating the predator density as the extraordinary variable. But the predator density is just Earth being Earth. She paused. The extraordinary variable is the response. A species that cannot be optimized against, Preston said quietly. Because it doesn't optimize. It just adapts. Continuously. To anything. Aeveth nodded. There is no ecological pressure, she said, that Earth did not apply to humans. Temperature extremes. Predator density. Disease load, and I cannot stress enough how much we are underreporting the disease load in this document. Resource scarcity. Geological instability. She looked around the room. Earth tried everything. For 300,000 years. Silence. And the humans, she continued, are here. Drinking coffee. Explaining bear spray to alien biologists. She invited Okafor to read the conclusion before submission. Professional courtesy. Humans reviewed all documentation about their homeworld before galactic publication. He read it standing at the display, coffee in hand, in the same quiet way he did everything. When he finished, he was silent for a moment. Is it accurate? Aeveth asked. Pretty much, he said. Does it concern you? How it reads. He considered this with genuine thoughtfulness, the kind that meant he wasn't performing humility. He was actually thinking. You know what concerns me more, he said finally. What? That you're surprised. He looked at the conclusion on the display. Every species in the galaxy evolved somewhere. Under some kind of pressure. Something was always trying to kill everything. He set down his coffee. We just happened to evolve somewhere where everything was trying at once. That distinction, Yiln said carefully, is not a small one. No, he agreed. But here's what I keep thinking about. He turned to face them fully. You've assessed 41 worlds. You've catalogued predators on every one of them. You know what pressure does to a species over time. He paused. Earth had more pressure than any world you've ever seen. Nobody argued. So what does that make us? He asked. Not aggressively. Not proudly. Genuinely. The question of a scientist asking other scientists to follow the data to its logical end. Aeveth followed it. She had been following it for 4 days. She knew where it ended. "It makes you the most pressure-tested species in our catalogue," she said quietly. "By a margin we don't currently have the mathematics to express cleanly." Okafor nodded slowly. Picked up his coffee. "That's what I thought," he said. The report was submitted on day 15. It was the longest homeworld assessment in consortium history. 412 pages. 7 appendices. A psychological adaptation volume that the review board initially assumed was a separate document accidentally attached, and which turned out to be entirely intentional and essential. The executive summary was 3 sentences. Earth is the highest predator density homeworld in the galactic catalogue by a factor of approximately 40. Humanity evolved within this environment without developing significant biological defenses. The implications of this for our understanding of human psychology, adaptability, and long-term civilizational trajectory are extensive and have not yet been fully modeled. The consortium's chair read the summary. Read the full report. Sat with it overnight. Sent one message to the survey team the following morning. "How soon can you go back?" Aeveth was already packed. She had one more question for Okafor. One she hadn't found the right moment for during 15 days of extraordinary data collection. She asked it at the airfield, standing beside the shuttle, the African savanna spreading gold and enormous in every direction around them. "Dr. Okafor, in your professional opinion." She looked at the horizon. Something moved along it, large, distant, unhurried. "Is Earth finished? With humans, I mean. Has it run out of ways to pressure you?" He followed her gaze to the horizon. Watched the distant shape move. Smiled the complicated smile she still didn't have a complete reference for. "Ask me in another 100,000 years," he said. She boarded the shuttle. Looked down through the viewport as Earth fell away beneath her, vast and green and crawling with 10,000 things that should have made intelligence impossible. She opened her recorder one last time. "Final note," she said. "Earth did not produce humanity despite its predator density. She watched the planet until the clouds swallowed it. Earth produced humanity because of it." She closed the recorder, looked at the stars, and wondered, quietly, professionally, with the specific unease of someone who has just recalibrated everything they thought they knew, what humanity would look like in another 100,000 years of practice. The universe had spent 3 billion years learning how to build predators. Earth had spent 300,000 years building something that ate the lesson, and called it home,